My sister's name is Jazmine, and she's an entitled brat. She gets everything she wants. Well, this time for her birthday, she's demanding a Ferrari. Yeah, a Ferrari. So my mom does everything she can to try to get her a nice car, but obviously not a Ferrari. Well, this was what happens on her birthday morning. My little sister, who's 16, has always been spoiled. Her demeanor is just infuriating. She always talks about how she wants this and that, and my parents, being older now, find nothing wrong with spoiling her. The fact that a 16-year-old girl is allowed to spend upwards of $3,000 per month, well, it's beyond me. This is what made me move out when I turned 18. I was sick of their crap. I personally have not been spoiled and have earned all my money by myself and paid my own college tuition completely. I try to be as independent as possible, the opposite of my sister. Before her 16th birthday, my father had broken his leg at work when he fell from a building they were working on. The company gave him a bit of money to compensate for the injury and paid leave for a few months. However, they cut it short when he was taking time to recover. This brought the family great grief, and we went from being upper middle class to borderline poverty. My dad had savings, but we needed them for the mortgage, which used up most of it. And the remainder could only do so much, so my mother had to start to work. It broke my heart to see my mother, who had never had a job in her life, work 3 jobs at once. I came home to support her for a bit and do some household chores when I heard about the situation. The thing that shocked me the most was that when I arrived, my sister had done nothing to help. She acted like nothing was wrong and did not help my dad with a thing, did not cook or clean at all. She left it up to my poor mother, who came home at 11 at night to prepare food for the next day and clean the entire house before she could finally sleep. I was devastated and tried to help as much as possible, but leading up to the days before her birthday, well, a few days before her birthday, Jazmine went out to her friend's birthday. She stayed out for 2 whole days, which left Mom worried sick her youngest daughter wasn't picking up the phone, and no one knew where she was. She did eventually come home safely. Unfortunately, she was hungover out of her mind and pulled up in a Ferrari. Yeah, her friend had gotten a Ferrari for her birthday. When she walked up to drive, Mom held her, walking her to the door. Then they had a little small talk, during which Jazmine said she wants a Ferrari. As well, my poor mother just had to smile and say, "We'll see what we can do about that." I looked at her in disgust and looked at my mother, who just mouthed, "Just leave her be, she'll forget this later." She took her to bed and waited by taking the day off, the work to look after her. After this whole fiasco, there were only 3 days until her birthday. We started to prepare. We got the cake, candles, another cake, simply because she wanted 2, some streamers and balloons, and rented out a pony. Yeah, a pony, for the entire day. A crazy party for a crazy kid. After setting this all up and letting Jazmine invite all her friends, we waited for the day, and I was prepared for a tantrum over not getting a Ferrari. But Mom insisted that she had a plan. I went back to doing chores and let my mom rest for before the big day. Finally, it was her birthday. She woke up and immediately demanded everyone sing happy birthday to her. She then went out with her friends in the morning to do some girl stuff, or whatever she said she was going to do, as she ran out of the house in a skimpy crop top and short pants. My mom just laughed it off and started setting the table and collecting the pony from the farmhouse near us. She did all this, then just went to her room. I looked outside to see if Jazmine had come back and saw a brand new Tesla parked in front of the house. I was shocked. It had a ribbon on it and everything. It must have been expensive. I asked Mom if it was Jazmine's, and she sighed, smiling and brushing her head in a tired manner, and said, "Yeah, I borrowed some money from a couple of friends and bought it for her. She should be happy on her birthday after all." My small, timid mother had put herself into debt just to make that spoiled demon happy. I was devastated, obviously, and just wished that Jazmine would, at the very least, appreciate what Mom's done for her. The Tesla was moved into the garage and everything was set up. Just as the birthday girl arrived, she waltzed in with her friends, not even greeting Dad or acknowledging him. She went to the backyard, and everyone sung happy birthday to her. After that, she cut the cake and began eating it with her friends. She cut the whole cake and took the biggest slice for herself, of course. After all her friends ate, there was no more cake left for me, Mom, or Dad. So Mom gave us some of the cookies. After this all, she sat talking with her friends for an hour or so, while they kept asking for more drinks, making my poor mom just wait for their every request. I tried helping, but my mom told me to just sit tight and enjoy the day. So I did, while I stared daggers into Jazmine's back. She was so irritating. After her long, dreary chatter, she started unwrapping her presents. Each of her friends had bought her multiple presents, each filling one of the sofas in the living room. She sat down and unwrapped them. The first would make any kid her age happy beyond belief. It was the newest iPhone at the time, and she looked at it and threw it to the corner of the room. Said, "I already have this one. How could you forget that?" While looking at the friend who bought it, "I'm sorry, Jazmine. I'll buy you another present later. Please look at the others I bought for you, though." The poor girl replied, picking up the broken device and putting it in her handbag. My sister saw this and blew up again. "Hey, put it down. It's mine," she said coldly, looking at her friend. "Oh, okay, geez, I'm sorry. You're the one who threw it in the first place. Could have just pretended to be happy at least." Oh, no. Then a whole argument happened, and I don't recall it all at the end. They made up somehow, and she opened the rest of the presents. I remember there being another phone, a camera, a MacBook, a PC, and some sweets, as well as other stuff. At the end, Mom got up and walked to Jazmine, holding a small little pink box. She handed it to her, saying, "This is something very special, so look after it." As she walked away, Jazmine opened the box to find a small golden pendant that had a cross on the end. She held it up and then threw it at Mother. Shouted, "I don't want you stinking necklace. You take it back." Well, Mom was heartbroken. She told me so excitedly of her present to Jazmine, how it's been in the family for generations. Her mother gave it to her, who was giving it to her grandmother, and so on. I stood up ready to beat some sense into this brat when my mom just held me back. And I stopped. I couldn't do anything. To see her daughter hurt would just make Mom more upset. As I turned back, Jazmine smiled at me. It was obvious. She was saying, quote, "You can't make me do anything." The whole room was a bit awkward after that one, and one of the friends apologized to Mom and trying to make her feel better. Then Mom announced that there was at least one present for Jazmine. Her eyes lit up as she looked over and asked, "Where is it?" Mom led them to drive Jazmine's friends, covering her eyes. With a blindfold, Mom opened the garage to let the Tesla out. The friends covered their mouths in shock as the car rolled down the drive. Mom got out and pulled off the blindfold, showing her daughter the nice car. Jazmine's smile dropped as she walked around the cars. She was visibly upset and crying and screaming at Mom, "I wanted a Ferrari, not a stupid Tesla." Her friends tried to console her, but they ended up arguing, and it just made everything worse. Jazmine ended up locking herself in the room, and the friends just stayed with Mom talking to her. They made Mom feel a bit better, but I could see she was worried and was blaming herself. I went to Jazmine's room to see if she would come out, and I sat against the door and spoke to her. The gist of the conversation was, "Hey, why'd you freak out so much?" I asked. "You wouldn't understand, so go away." She replied, "Well, maybe I will if you just tell me Mom did so much for you. You don't even deserve the car out there. She took out loans just to buy it, and you can't even say thank you." I shouted, getting angrier by the second. Well, I didn't know all that, but still it doesn't change anything. Did I ask her to buy it? All I wanted was a Ferrari. She couldn't even buy that for me. She whined and cried, and I just stood up and left in an anger. There was no reasoning with her. I did not want to get into an argument with her at all. I didn't tell Mom what happened because I did not want her to worry anymore. The girls were still talking with her, and she had seemed to cheer it up a bit. I sat down with Dad by the pool and was lounging and took a break to drink some water and just relax. Just then, the back door slammed open. Jazmine had come out of her room and she was visibly distraught. Had something in her hand, then a loud bang sound filled the yard. A gunshot. She had shot the gun, then she shot 2 more times into the crowd that was sitting around Mom. She had shot her mother. Dad's face just dropped when he realized, and he shouted at Jazmine to get the hell out of there and limped over to his wife who was on the floor. He held her up and tries to stop the bleeding as much as possible, pressing down on her chest. Jazmine was still standing there and smiling. She dropped the gun and ran out of the house laughing on her way. The friends ran after her and left the house, trying to avoid the situation as much as possible. It was just Mom and Dad left. I called the ambulance and was barely able to control myself. I was just a wreck. I looked over at my sister, who just smiled, and I realized I needed to get my stuff together and get the police and ambulance here as fast as possible. I spoke to the lady who was on the line and told her what happened, including that Jazmine had run away now, but had left the gun laying on the floor. The paramedics and officers arrived a couple minutes later and took my mom and dad away, and I went to the police station to file a report. I was shaking as I recalled the events that happened just an hour or so ago. The officer gave me water and time to recall my thoughts and wrote down everything. After I finished, I was walking out and saw Jazmine, her hair soiled with mud and her arms scraped, gaze covered her body. She was held by her arm, her hands and handcuffed behind her back, and officers around her. I stopped and faced her, anger rising up. I was about to lunge at her when my dad, who was beside her, held my hand and told me, "She's not worth it, Caitlin. Go see Mom." The doctor said she should recover well, and I ran out the door, tears streaming down my face, got into my car, drove directly to the hospital throughout the journey, thanking God, and just crying my eyes out, basically. I got there and talked to the front desk, and they led me to her room. I opened the door to see Mom, laying there. She'd propped herself up a bit. There were hospital equipment all around her and an IV drip, a heartbeat sensor that beeped every second, and a needle. Lots of needles. I sobbed, resting my head on Mom's lap, and stayed like that for a while. I woke up after my nap and saw Mom holding my head and Dad sitting in a chair next to the bed. I got up and pushed my hair back a bit. Dad told me that Jazmine had been taken to juvenile center and was staying there for a meantime until her trial. I asked them how they felt, and Mom said she did not know and was still in a state of shock, and Dad just shook his head in disapproval of the question. I sat back and just stared at the wall, thinking what could have led Jazmine to doing this. I blame myself partly, because I made her mad earlier and apologized to Mom, repeating it over and over. I looked at her and she just smiled and said, "Caitlin, it's not your fault. You did nothing wrong. I want you to go visit Jazmine and hand this letter to her. Please be understanding." Well, she handed me the letter. It was sealed in a pink envelope with a small little red stamp on it. I went to the center she was at after Dad told me the address and asked to have a meeting with Jazmine. I sat down in a long room with glass separated the sides. A phone was placed there, a little slit for handing over papers. I was facing Jazmine and she looked at me and she looked rough. Her hair was a mess, her clothes were too big for her, and she had tears in her eyes. And we had a conversation. I told her how Mom is and that she gave her a letter to read. I gave it to her. She read it. As she read it, she cried, and tears made the whole table wet. She stood up and came back a few minutes later with her own crudely enveloped letter addressed to Mom. She handed it to me and said, "Please don't read it, just give it to Mother." I said okay, as her tone had changed. She was no longer snappy with her request and sounded almost defeated and meek. I went back and gave Mom the letter. She read it and smiled. I never got to know what the letter was about. But I know that Jazmine nowadays is a very different person. She got 2 years and spent half outside on house arrest. She started doing chores and gave helping mom with things. I still find it hard to forgive her, but have been trying, and it seems she's really improving as a person. I hope it stays like that. Okay, so let's be real. My opinion for this one is, yeah, it's good that at the end of the story, she's doing better now and improving, but she freaking shot someone. How did she only get 2 years for that? It just doesn't make sense to me. I know she's a juvenile and the mom probably just wanted the least charges possible, but she just got shot by her own daughter that she brought into this world. Oh man, what would you guys do in this position? Go no contact, completely opposite than the mother of this story did, or do something different? Let me know your thoughts. The final story that we're going to look at for this video is, am I the a-hole for, quote, making fun of a woman for being in her 40s and single? This whole saga started because my husband took my last name. A couple weeks ago, he got his workplace to change it and his coworkers found out. About half of them think it's the funniest thing ever, and about half are deeply offended. Brenda is in the offended half and has made that very clear. He and I are in a group chat with some coworkers where we organize carpooling during the pandemic. It is very helpful to us, so we can't leave the chat. Since he changed his name, my husband and I have been dealing with a lot of dumb jokes in the chat, which we've been mostly ignoring. Yesterday, Brenda, his coworker, and I got into a big spat. I messaged the group asking if someone could take my husband home, since I wouldn't be back from work until late, and needed the car. One of his other coworkers agreed, and I thought that was that. Brenda messaged the group saying, quote, maybe if you spent less time at work and more time being a wife, your husband would not come into work with a dirty shirt. I took this as a bad joke initially, and my husband's a rural mail carrier, so his shirt looks like shirts worn by someone in a 90-degree heat on dusty roads. I do wash them, but there's only so much to be done. Okay, so this is what I say to Brenda and what she says to me. I could make cleaning those shirts my full-time job, and it wouldn't do much. You won't be married very long if you keep trying to be the man in the relationship. I'd be embarrassed as a wife if I did so little for my husband. Brenda, well, I work more hours and pay the bills, so I think he can OxyClean his own shirt if it's so important. Maybe you should learn to take proper care of your husband, or you'll find yourself divorced. I'll let you know when I need relationship advice from someone who's 42 and single. Now, apparently Brenda's going around and saying that I mocked her for being single in her 40s. I don't care if someone's single in their 40s, but I think it's absolute bullcrap that she can call me a bad wife, but I can't point out that she has no frame of reference. So guys, am I the a-hole? I think Brenda has been sipping a little bit too much of the gossip tea. She needs to chill out a bit and maybe her coworkers won't hate her. Let me know your thoughts on this story, guys. That's going to bring the video to an end. Don't forget to check out the other channels if you just want more daily content, because I post videos on each one of my channels every single day. You can find the links to all my channels in the description below. If you want to change up the pace a little bit and you don't want relationship stories or inheritance dramas, check out the office drama stories that I have on my office drama channel, Mr. Reddito Office Dramas. And I'll see you guys in the next one.